The new YGO Reborn update is out, so you all know what that means. That's right, we're gonna have a lot more decks to showcase. Today's deck showcase is Hero, a deck that finally got its big playmaking cards, or should I say card, but we'll get to him when we get there. For now, let's look at what this deck has to offer. We start off nice and easy with Cyber Dragon, who, let's just say, is absolutely amazing. Free 2100. Next, we have Elemental Hero Blededge, a level 7 with piercing battle damage. You'll almost never want to summon out Blededge. Sure, he has higher attack, but he requires 2 tributes and is better off as fusion material. We have 2 copies of Elemental Hero Sparkman, a mid-1600, but where he really shines is the fusions, which we will get to, trust. Then we have the absolute GOAT of hero cards, dropped early into this format. We have Elemental Hero Stratos, an absolutely amazing monster that can search a hero, or if there are other heroes on board, it can pop cards equal to the amount of heroes you have. Obviously, most of the time you will want to search a hero, but if you need it, popping a couple of set spells and traps is never bad. Then we have Elemental Hero Wildheart, a 1500 hero that's immune to traps. Very nice for torrential tribute plays. This card, if nothing else, can finish off games because of its immunity. Then we have King of the Swamp, a fusion sub that can search out polymerization. The strategic depth of this card is a little nice because you can discard it to search poly, then use Miracle Fusion to summon out a fusion monster, which is a nice combo. Sangon searches out King of the Swamp or Wildheart when destroyed, which is pretty nice. The spells in this deck are the real meat of Hero, as they enable the deck's main win condition. The fusions. We have Emergency Call, which adds any hero from your deck to your hand, but 90% of the time you're going to be searching Stratos, who searches another monster. But if you already have Stratos, I would recommend either Blededge or Wildheart. Giant Trunade sends all spells and traps back to hand, while Heavy Storm and Mystical Space Typhoon remove them. Lightning Vortex is amazing monster removal, as it gets rid of all face-up monsters your opponent has. But the real shining stars are the fusion cards, as Miracle Fusion allows you to fusion summon using heroes in the grave or on board, and Polymerization allows you to fusion summon with any cards in your hand or on the field. 2 essential cards in a hero deck, along with Stratos. Reinforcement of the Army gives us another way to search Stratos or a hero, and United We Stand can buff a hero by 800 for each monster on the field, turning a Wildheart into a major threat or any other hero for that matter. Call of the Haunted resurrects any monster from grave that can be special summoned, and Compulsory Evacuation Device recycles Stratos effect so it can be used again. But it also works on opponents' face-up or face-down monsters. While Magic Cylinder takes your opponent's monster's attack and deals their attack value back at them, Mirror Force destroys all face-up attack position monsters your opponent has out. Solemn Judgment stops any plays your opponent might try to make to take over the game, and Torrential Tribute stops your opponent from extending their board. But finally, in one of these decks, the fusions are actually useful, and not just that, they are the deck's main win condition. The Cyber Fusions are here just in case you get 2 or more Cyber Dragons and a poly. Not very likely, but you want to be prepared for that situation. Now for the Hero Fusions. Elemental Hero Necroid Shaman destroys a monster on summon and summons a new one from your opponent's grave, which is amazing. You can pop any powerful monster or wall and swap it out for a weak monster and choose its position. Shining Flare Wingman gains attack for each hero in grave and deals damage equal to an opponent's monster. An amazing fusion. Most of the time you will want to use the Wildheart fusions, but this one is great for another option. Thunder Giant is good for getting over any walls your opponent puts up like Spirit Reaper but not much else. Wild Wingman pops a face-down trap, which is good for extending and finishing your opponent. Wild Edge can attack all your opponent's monsters. And Sandwich is here because Sangon is. It is a vital part of the squad, trust. The main strategy of the deck is to search out Stratos, use Stratos to search your main heroes, fusion summon, and beat up your opponent. Don't allow them to get a foothold, and focus on the main goal. Stratos or bust. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to some games. While looking to record some footage, I ran into Junior, a notable community member and tournament winner. So without further ado, let's duel. I use Reinforcement of the Army to grab Stratos, and then I summon him to the field and search out Elemental Hero Wildheart. Right away, this is exactly the kind of opening hand you want to see when you're playing hero. Stratos gets the deck schmoving with his effect so the other heroes can do their job. Then I use King of the Swamp to grab a polymerization from my deck, but I'll save it for now to avoid any monster removal. There is no reason to rush into a fusion if I don't have to, because the fusions are the deck's main win condition. So after a bit of thinking, I'll summon Elemental Hero Wildheart in attack position and place my compulsory evacuation device face down. Then I move to battle and attack directly with both of them. But first, Junior activates his scapegoat, putting 4 bodies on board, so I'll simply attack 2 of those. However, when I attack with my Stratos, Junior activates his Ring of Destruction, destroying my Stratos and dealing 1800 to both of us. Before the turn ends, Junior activates his Dust Tornado, destroying my compulsory evacuation device, then setting a card face down. Just like that, we've traded a few resources back and forth, and the duel is starting to develop into a real grind game. On Junior's turn, he simply summons Mystic Tomato in attack position and ends his turn. Mystic Tomato is one of those monsters you always have to keep an eye on because it had a valuable searcher on my turn. I'll fusion summon Elemental Hero Wild Edge. Now we're talking. Wild Edge is one of the strongest fusion monsters available to this deck right now, and its ability to attack every monster my opponent controls makes it a serious threat. I'll play it a little cautiously because I am not aware of Junior's face downs and just attack with Wild Edge into all of his monsters. I attack into Mystic Tomato, and after a bit, Junior summons out Sangon, which I also attack. Sangon goes down as well, giving Junior a search, but Wild Edge isn't finished yet. I continue attacking through all 3 remaining sheep tokens one after the other, clearing the entire field and putting Junior under a lot of pressure. At this point, Wild Edge is doing exactly what I summoned it to do. It is forcing my opponent to react and preventing them from establishing any kind of board presence. With the field cleared, I call it a turn there. On his turn, Junior summons Injection Fairy Lily but forgets to turn auto on, which we both get a kick out of. It would not have mattered much in the end, but it's always important to have a good time, even in your own mistakes. Everybody misplays from time to time, and honestly, moments like that are part of what makes these games fun. Sometimes the most memorable moments in a duel aren't the big combos or the flashy finishers. Sometimes it's just something silly happening that both players can laugh about afterward. And that's one thing I've always liked about this game. Even in competitive matches, most people are just here to have fun, play some cards, and enjoy themselves. At this point, Junior is running out of options, Wild Edge is still on the field, and the duel is firmly in our control. Hero has done exactly what Hero wants to do. Establish pressure, keep the opponent on the defensive, and use powerful fusion monsters to close out the game. With that, we'll take the win and move on to the next duel. Another duel, here we go. I win the coin toss and decide to go first, and on my turn I'll shotgun activate emergency call to add Stratos to my hand and use his effect to add Blood Edge to my hand to avoid bricking into it later. For now, I'll play it safe, only setting one of my traps, Torrential Tribute, face down to avoid any heavy storm or any big destruction that would ruin my day. On my opponent's turn, they use Mystical Space Typhoon to destroy my Torrential, then, after a long bit of thinking, decide to simply set a monster face down in defense position. Not a particularly explosive opening from either player so far, but sometimes those slower starts can tell you a lot about the kind of duel you're about to play. Right now, I'm not entirely sure what my opponent is on, so I'm trying to keep my options open. On my turn, I draw Compulsory Evacuation Device, so I decide to simply set both my Mirror Force and my Compulsory Evacuation Device face down and then attack my opponent's face down. Turns out to be Sangon, so they get to search a monster from their deck that has 1500 or lower attack. Sangon is one of those cards you're almost always happy to see destroyed because it replaces itself with exactly what you need. My opponent chooses Proto-Cyber Dragon and simply sets another monster face down in defense position. Then I'll use my Compulsory Evacuation Device to get my Stratos back into my hand to recycle his effect. A little trick like that can go a long way in hero decks because Stratos is usually the card you want to see more than any other. If I can keep reusing that search effect, I'm almost always going to find the pieces I need. On my turn, I'll special summon my Cyber Dragon, and I'll use my King of the Swamps effect in order to get a polymerization in hand. Then I normal summon my Stratos and search Sparkman from my deck. At this point, Everything is starting to come together nicely. We have the fusion materials we need, we have polymerization, and we have a strong board already developing. Then I fusion summon elemental hero Wild Edge, and since it can attack all of my opponent's monsters, I'll attack with it to get over any searchers my opponent may have. Wild Edge is one of my favorite fusion monsters in this format. Being able to attack every monster your opponent controls makes it incredibly good at clearing boards and forcing your opponent onto the defensive. The face down turns out to be DD Warrior Lady, which banishes both itself and my Wild Edge. That's honestly a pretty good answer from my opponent. Losing Wild Edge isn't ideal, but at least it traded for something and cleared the way for my other monsters. So I will attack directly with both my Stratos and my Cyber Dragon, dealing 2,900 points of damage, and I'll call it a turn there. On my opponent's turn, they normal summon Proto-Cyber Dragon and activate Power Bond in order to summon Chimeratech Overdragon, which now has 3 attacks. However, the downside to summoning this monster is that it destroys all your other cards, so it does have a bug weakness. So, when it attacks, I have Mirror Force, so it destroys the monster. That is exactly why Mirror Force remains one of the strongest traps in the format. Sometimes all it takes is one attack to completely turn a duel around. On my turn, I'll normal summon Sparkman. Before I can attack for game though, my opponent scoops and simply surrenders. On to our final duel. After looking around for another duel to include in the vid, I just couldn't get quality footage of another duel, so my apologies for that. But you get the idea of Hero by now. I really did want to include a third duel in here, but I also want this video out in a reasonable amount of time, so this time I will have to compromise. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. There will be a link below in the comments and description for the Discord and deck code if you want to try out the deck. Now you too can go out to YGO Reborn and be a Jaden Yuki or Judai Larper. And always remember, kids, Stratos is the GOAT.